We start all of our work at CEC with the labor management cultural work. We start with an architecture, really, and it's meant to be more than kind of a symbolic kind of phase to school districts and so forth. It's really meant to, in some senses, frame the work and to set up what I'm now going to talk about, which is the boundary audit. As you know, we work with the union and management, and our job ordinarily is to build some sort of a collaborative process between the union and management such that we move this relationship in a certain kind of way with the purpose of opening up the work at a school site driven by the voice of the teacher. You'd think that's fairly simple, fairly easy, and fairly straightforward, but it turns out that there are pieces that come with this architecture that in some senses preclude that voice from being very powerful. The first is that in some senses we've got an old hierarchy here, a top-down system with enormous amounts of control built into the central office. We've got a field manager, a principal, whose job it is to try and figure out all of the compliance instructions and mandates, and to do so in such a way that it hopefully doesn't bother this ongoing work, but keeps aligning it and moving it towards a certain direction. The issue really is that the union and management is set up in the country to be an industrial model of unionism, in which if the industrial union is somehow assumed here, then management takes most of the responsibility of defining what the product is, what the quality is, what the performance ought to be, and the measurements and so forth. That means that what you end up having in a professional organization like a school with teacher voice here, you end up with this voice muted, with most of the decisions around product, if you will, goals of education, and you end up language around how to judge it in terms of quality, how to perform it in terms of pedagogy, how to choose curriculum and so forth. All of those professional judgments are made in an industrial model by management only. The union bargains pay, benefits, and working conditions. Right? But if you basically say, I need the professional voice day in and day out to help me and make input into all of this, it turns out that you have to have a systemic strategy that opens this relationship to move to that voice, that changes in some senses the practice of the management day in and day out at the central office, at the point of the principal, such that these men and women start to come to the party of deep, honest dialogue around how to improve their work. It turns out that this may be the most difficult piece because for years they have been basically taught and treated as if they didn't have voice here. And if you think about it for a minute, it's easier to go that way eventually. It makes you angry. All right? It makes you resentful, but after all is said and done, you say, look, there's a bunch of people here who think they're responsible for my quality and my work. Godspeed, bring it on. All right? And the last piece of that kind of top-down model and trying to elicit voice, and what I mean by voice is responsibility, all right, deep caring about the work, and in some senses assuming all the responsibilities for its measurement and so forth. If you teach the same way, in a high control frame, and you're saying to this fourth grade, you learn from me, I define what it is the goals are, I define what it is the pace in which we're going to use and so forth. Turns out by 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, all right, this enthusiastic little learner begins to think this person seems to be in charge of my learning here, and I wish her Godspeed. But it's not my choice, not my work, and not in some senses my responsibility. So the displacement at the bottom of the triangle around this is deadly. It's deadly for quality, it's deadly for powerful energy. It in some senses mutes this thing to the point where this comes with all of its power about half to the party ordinarily. So you're trying to open this up, and you can't do it unless you have a strategy here and a strategy here. So that's the framework, if you will.